Hi everyone, Francis Walsh here again with thedigitalmerchant.com, and today we're looking at both Melio and Ramp, and we're going to compare the two, kind of see what they both offer and whether one or the other or both might even be suitable for your business and a worthwhile investment. They're both tools that help with the administration of expenses and accounts receivable. Well, receivable in Melio's case. There is a certain degree of overlap between the two, but they do really cater to different segments of the market and different kind of service requirements. So let's dive in and have a look at them. So here you see Melio's homepage. Melio is kind of, as I was saying there, primarily an accounts payable and accounts receivable service. So it will centralize a lot of the tools and the processes that are needed for accounts payable and accounts receivable. It may allow you to centralize these functions rather than using a couple of different tools, and it'll ideally cut down on the time and the resources needed to execute these functions by your team. It is kind of best suited to small to medium teams, I suppose. It doesn't probably offer as much for bigger companies. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail later in the video. And I suppose this is one of the key differences between Melio and Ramp. So Ramp is kind of scalable right up to the enterprise level. It really works well with bigger companies with demanding expense requirements and multiple teams, maybe with different processes in that regard. It is mainly an expense management platform, and I suppose its flagship offering is its corporate card system. So essentially, it will administer your corporate cards and for use by your team. But then there are also a lot of other features as well, obviously, when it comes to expense reporting, categorization, automation of submissions, all that kind of thing. It does really well. So I suppose moving on, we're going to have a look at the advantages of each tool, their best use cases, and the kind of teams that would get the most out of them. So I suppose this is the key point really about this video, is that context really is the deciding factor here. I know we're kind of framing this as Melio versus Ramp, but it's not really a case of which is better than the other, because they do kind of execute different functions. And so what's important to be aware of if you're a decision maker who's kind of watching this, you need to choose based on the specific needs that you have. Don't look at the marketing content of each company and kind of be swayed by all the features and all the flashy promotion and all that kind of thing. Think about features you need and think about which company offers a suite of features that best matches your requirements. Think about your own workflow. Think about the scale of your business and where it's going, and think about the integrations, the available integrations with the kind of tools you already use and want to keep using. So I suppose what Melio does best is it focuses on bill payments and receivables. Now, the receivables function is actually particularly crucial here. Ramp doesn't offer an accounts receivable function. That's something you'll only get with Melio between the two of these. As I was saying, it is probably best for small teams and solo operators. There's a few reasons for this. It doesn't scale, I suppose, particularly well, not as well as Ramp would. But it's very simple and straightforward and easy to implement as well. There's not a huge learning curve with it. It won't add a lot of kind of stress to your team, and it won't significantly weigh down your existing workflows, that kind of thing. So if you're a kind of a solo operator, small team, early stage startup, that kind of thing, you could get a lot of value from Melio. Ramp then, as I was saying, it could take you right up to the enterprise level. It does work well with big companies and with diverse teams and that kind of thing. Its corporate card system, as I was saying, is kind of its main offering. It does a really good job here, especially if there's a lot of cross-border transactions, travel going on. Its corporate card system works really well. It implements good kind of systems in terms of accounts payable, spend control, that kind of thing as well. And a key consideration here is that it centralizes a lot of these operations. So a lot of companies would use other providers, would say AMX, Bill.com and the likes, and then those functions might be split across a couple of platforms. Ramp will allow you to take care of all of this on the one platform, which is great for admin. It's great for reducing kind of headaches and friction within your teams. So that's a big selling point, I think, of Ramp. So Melio's key features, the pay over time feature for vendor bills. This is something they've introduced, I believe, recently enough. Essentially, it will just allow you to pay a vendor bill at once, so that the vendor obviously receives the money, and you can pay it back over an extended period, kind of for a fee. So that's obviously handy if that would assist with your cash flows. It's nice to have that option. It auto collects your W-9s. It'll auto generate your 1099s. This third point here, actually, I think is very interesting, and it's very useful for a lot of businesses. If you are dealing with a vendor that doesn't accept card payments, you can pay by card, and the company will, or sorry, the Melio will allow the vendor to collect payment it means that they actually do accept. And this works for card, it works for ACH, it even works for checks. So that's very handy, obviously, because look, a lot of vendors do have slightly awkward payment systems in place. So it is nice to have a kind of a system that it's not going to slow everything down when they're dealing with a vendor that will only accept a check or whatever it is. It syncs with QuickBooks and Xero, so a lot of companies are already using those, and it really takes a lot of the friction out of implementing Melio. And then it has a mobile app, it has AR tools, it has international payments. Essentially, it has a lot of what you'll need just to effectively implement your accounts receivable and accounts payable solutions. It's just very handy, very easy to implement. There's not really a steep learning curve with it, which is nice. So Ramp, as I was saying, is more focused on the expense management side of things. It's a system essentially for paying your bills, reimbursing your people, managing your travel expenses. It's got a really nice intuitive system when it comes to setting your spend limits. Its categorization of expenses is nice. It makes a lot of sense. Again, not a huge learning curve with it, which is great. Your teams aren't going to hate using it. It's not difficult to learn. And then, as I was saying, it replaces the likes of Expensify, Bill.com, and Amex. If you're using multiple tools, you can replace them all with Ramp. And as I was saying, it's quite user-friendly. So it can reduce a lot of friction in that way. So from here on, I'm kind of going to look at some of the kind of the key areas that are probably of concern to you. I'm just going to break down which platform does better, which platform does worse. So if you look at support and usability, first off, this is one area in which Melio kind of falls down a small bit. You can only get chat support on the free plan. You can only access phone support, we'll say, on one of the paid plans. And then if you're on one of the free plans, you only get chat support. This is a bit of a drawback in my view, because look, everyone knows that chatbots aren't always the best way to get problem solved. If you've got a kind of any sort of complicated problem, much easier to jump on the phone with a real human and kind of sort it out that way. So the fact that this isn't available on the free version, it's something to bear in mind. Also, the support hours are a little bit limited, even when you do get in contact with the human representative. I believe it's only just for business hours on EST, so that can be a little bit limiting as well. Ramp does slightly better in terms of its support and usability. All users, right down to the free users of the free version, can access phone support. And so basically, they do take more of a human first approach to problem resolution, which is good because obviously, look, you're dealing with your finances. Problems can arise and they need to get sorted out quickly. And having that level of support, I think, is very useful. So the pricing access, Melio does have low per transaction fees, which is nice. It doesn't, as I was kind of referred to in the last slide, its free version is a small bit limited. I feel like most businesses will probably need to start on one of the pricing tiers. Now, they are quite reasonable, and as you can see here, it's kind of on a per transaction basis. So you're not getting, we'll say, disadvantaged by signing up to a package that's too comprehensive for your needs. And the per transaction fees are also quite low, so it's not a huge, it's not going to take a huge chunk out of your budget. And then, that kind of ties in with the second point here. It does scale well for small teams, because you're using it on a by use basis, we'll say. Ramp's core platform actually is free because it generates a lot of its revenue from its card transactions rather than taking it from the user. One major drawback, though, of Ramp's pricing system is that it charges $10 per transaction for same-day ACH transfers. I believe with Melio they're only 50 cents, and I'm not sure if they're always same-day. But I mean, obviously, it's much more cost effective for ACHs to use Melio. $10, unless you're dealing solely in very big transaction amounts. I mean, $10 for an ACH transfer is quite significant. So that's something to bear in mind. So I suppose then, just in terms of the main drawbacks of each tool, Melio, as I was saying, the free version is quite limited. Most companies are going to need to jump on one of the pricing tiers. Now, they are, as I was saying, quite reasonable, and they do represent good value for money. And because it's done on a per transaction basis, as I was saying, you're not risking signing up to too comprehensive a model and not getting the value from your investment. And then the second point here kind of ties in with the first. You just don't get phone support if you're on one of those free tiers, which is, when you're dealing with finances, I think can be quite limiting. Ramp, you're dealing with high ACH fees. And then Ramp, another big problem with Ramp is that you do need, there are quite demanding requirements to get approved. So it is a corporate credit line, which means not just anyone can sign up. They're lending you money essentially. One of the basic requirements is that you have a $25,000 cash balance to get started, which, look, not every company is going to just have that lying around, particularly at the smaller end of the scale. And this is kind of why I was saying too, is that Melio is probably more suited to those smaller companies, maybe solo operations or small teams. With Melio, there's no such thing as a minimum cash requirement. You can get started with any amount of money. They're not obviously extending a credit line to you, so it just makes that easier from that point of view. But yeah, access is something that is an issue with Ramp, and it's something that's been covered quite a lot on Reddit and the likes as well, is that it's not necessarily that easy to get started with Ramp, particularly for smaller operations. So overall, I suppose, generally speaking, smaller teams who just need bill pay and receivable functions should probably go with Melio. Then larger companies that are looking to control their spend at scale should probably go with Ramp. Depending on where you are, say if you're a mid-cap company and you need a kind of a comprehensive solution for both, say, accounts receivable, accounts payable, and your corporate spend, you might even look into using both tools at once. But yeah, so essentially smaller teams would be better off looking at Melio. Bigger teams probably better off looking at Ramp. And other than that, really, it just depends on your individual needs. So yeah, that's all for me on this one, and I'll see you in the next video.